So the next question is going to be, how do we render motorcycle tires? And so I'm going to suggest that we start with a plastic, and then we're going to reduce the specular value so the light doesn't bounce off it, so it's not as shiny, not as much light is coming off of it. I'll recommend using curvature to control the different diffuse values. We're going to add a roughness texture to add some realism, and then some small noise for a subtle texture. Now, if we pop back on into KeyShot, I'll go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. So if I go and turn this guy off, I'm going to use part of this camera assembly for my example. And there's this little button here that I think is going to be, it has enough curvature to show off what I'm talking about. So Alt left click to hide everything except for this button. And then these details have been modeled into it. So if I go into this button and I just turn on this plain black rubber, this is a good starting point for this material. So it's just a plastic, and normally specular value is all the way up being 100% white. So what I suggest for a rubber is we reduce that to about 80%, maybe even a little bit lower, maybe 60. So it's not as reflective. And then the roughness, which would start out at 0, is actually cranked up to say 0.2, so pretty high. And then we have the ability to add that curvature that we were talking about. So if I click on the checkerboard to the right of the diffuse and I right click and go to text, oops, that's off screen. Let's go into the material graph. You can see that better. I'm going to have to ask you to ignore all these other multi-materials up here because we're going to use them later in the demo. So just this guy down here, we got our rubber, which is made of plastic, and it's got a little bit of a bump texture on it. If we go and get a texture called curvature, we plug this into our diffuse, we see it gets all these bright colors. And all we need to do is double click on this node and change our positive curvature to a lighter gray, so not pure black. So we're going to go right around here. And then we're going to set the 0 curvature to pretty much the black color that we want on our tire. And for the negative curvature, we will go, we can go also just a touch higher, a little bit brighter than pure black we want. And let's bring this guy down. And last but not least, it looks like these colors are too sharp. So we're going to take our, we're going to turn off radiuses in pixels and set our radius to about 1 millimeter. And you can see it's got a 1 millimeter radius, this fuzziness here. And we can maybe even make that smaller, say 0.5. And then you can reduce, play with all these settings to dial it in. But the idea is that you're going to use a lighter color on the positive curvature and a darker color on the negative curvature. So you've got this kind of rubber-like looking, these different colors going on. And then last but not least, I mentioned a roughness texture. In this case, there's just a uniform roughness, but you could always go into your textures, find something like, say, granite, plug that guy on into our roughness for this. If we preview it with C, let's scale this guy down to 50 or 20. And then let's just make it black and white. If we get out of this preview, you'll see it's mostly rough, but then you've got some more glossy areas, and that's going to create this kind of worn, dusty, faded, rough look here. And it's just a matter of dialing these in to get that appearance that you're after, but this is generally the framework that I would follow. Again, with the demo, I can't spend time dialing these materials in, but I just want to show you my approach. So hopefully that's helpful.